I'm Greg Giuliano. I'm an executive coach, organizational change consultant, and author. I believe leaders have the power to shape the future and change people's lives. I also believe people who challenge the status quo and go beyond usual and ordinary are rare. They're willing to go to the edge and push farther, over and over again. When I find these ultra leaders, I love to talk with them. In each episode, I talk with ultra leaders to learn how they do what they do and how they keep growing as leaders. I promise you a full dose of ultra leadership from other ultra leaders just like you in every conversation. We're at the edge of another episode. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Ultra Leadership. My guest today is Marek Wasilewski. In his capacity as the Vice President of Service Sales Americas for Extreme Networks, Mark spearheads an expansive team responsible for orchestrating service sales throughout North and South America. In a career spanning over 2 decades, Marek has consistently built and sustained high-achieving teams, nurturing environments primed for success. He has an unwavering commitment to foster positive change through the synergy of collaboration and technology, recognizing that the pinnacle of human performance is achieved when passion and dedication intersect. He proudly assumes the mantle of digital transformation evangelist, advocating for the betterment of our global community. And while he loves his work, his heart remains tethered to his family. They make their home in Dallas, Texas, where he's speaking to us from today. And he revels in an active lifestyle, which I love, cycling a lot with and for a local charity. I'm thrilled to have him here. Welcome, Marek.
Greg, good morning. With an introduction like this, how can I possibly fail?
That's right. We have set you up for success, my friend. So I'm watching all the cool stuff that you post on LinkedIn. And while you are all about digital transformation, you spend a lot of time talking about just leadership, which I love, right? So you get the balance that we've got to drive results and make and lead change, but that's about people. That's the sense that I get from the posts, that you're really all about people. And you spend a lot of time mentoring folks, which I appreciate. So I want to ask you, and you when you are interacting with younger leaders and mentoring them, what's the advice that you share most to these younger folks who are coming up?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. I do spend a lot of my time sort of trying to nurture the softer elements of business. And I think so often, maybe not forgotten, but ignored. And the reality of it all, if you look at it, is like if you take care of your people will take care of the business. I know it's an old cliche, but it really is and it should ring true to everyone. My advice, I guess, for new first-time leaders, especially those that are passionate about leadership, is to, first of all, shift your mindset. In other words, embrace the growth mindset. Accept the fact that you might not know everything and you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help, for advice. Identifying your own mentor for a certain reason is to help you grow. But I think it's extremely important that whilst you find your own mentor and you read a lot in terms of, self-help books and so on and so forth, one needs to develop your own leadership style. And I think that's extremely important, right? So yes, you can aspire to be somebody else, but if you're trying to replicate somebody else's style, it will forever feel false to you as an individual. So through finding that mentor and the reason why you chose the mentor to obviously follow them or to spend more time with them, you've got to focus on yourself to identify what really and where your strengths lie from a mentorship point of view. And then ultimately focus on one thing and one thing only, and that is empowering your team, trusting your team, and actively creating that environment for critical thinking, and which ultimately then creates the environment for success.
Empowering your team. I mean, that's it in a nutshell, right? And especially younger people that I'm talking to when we're working inside organizations, they don't want to be told what to do, right? Nobody likes to be told what to do. Well, how do we empower people, right? And so I flip that on them, and I love the way you talked about finding your own style. So as leaders, if you don't know it already, listeners, if you're a leader, everybody's watching what you do much less than what you say, right? So your actions speak louder than words. So they're watching you all the time. And so if you're looking at other leaders in the organization, you're going to get lessons every day of, oh, I want to do it like that. I don't want to do it like that. Or like the way that leader shows up, I don't like that at all. It's very disengaging, disempowering. So I like to ask younger leaders, when do you feel empowered? What makes you feel empowered? And then find a way to do that in your own style, like you say.
Without a doubt, I think there are a number of sort of key attributes that need to be sort of maybe called out time and time again, because we do live in a different environment than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's obviously making a statement about the obvious. But things that I try to sort of nurture, or things that I try to call out on, it's like lead by example. Yes, it's easier said than done, but try to be the role model to your team and demonstrate certain values and certain behaviors. Prime example might be the state of vulnerability. So, in other words, do not be afraid to ask for help. I think it actually, if anything, it empowers your team around you, because now all of a sudden they do feel like they have an opportunity to contribute to a topic which their leader is asking for help on, right? And that to me, that kind of a behavior, when you start to sort of stack it all up at the end of the day, all contributes towards what we call, creating or generating teams for success. And there are many other ones, like, make sure that you provide regular feedback, celebrate achievements, and so on and so forth. This is why I'm saying it's extremely important to identify, your own individual style and tweak it accordingly. Don't be too rigid on it, because it should be an ever growing, breathing part of your culture, and therefore ultimately part of your individual growth.
Yeah. So you lead in a way, your style comes out in the system that you've developed, that you follow with the teams that you lead. So tell us a little bit about this, because I love this.
This is the framework that you're referring to, is a framework called TEAM. And it's a 4-letter acronym, and I try to keep things simple wherever I can. So TEAM. And over the last 25 years in my professional journey, this I've had extensive experience on successes and challenges, and I found myself grappling, as any new leader would, with uncertainties, frustration, self-doubt. I mean, they were all inevitable. Yet each hurdle helped me and served as a stepping stone for continuous progress. So 10 years ago, we were moved to the US. So yet another move across yet another pond. And I took on another challenge. And as I honed my understanding of strategies and manner of steadily and try to navigate towards the desired outcome, always trying to navigate, through different sort of historical moments that I've lived through. In other words, identifying what have I done previously. I noticed that what I was lacking is a framework that could be left behind for my upcoming leaders. And also it gave me a sort of a guiding rails, if you like, to ensure that I remain consistent to it. So if you don't mind, as for the question, I'll talk you through the sort of the 4 pillars of team. And then there are 3 key guiding or surrounding principles that lie behind it. So the first 4 pillars, right? And bear in mind, this is not a rigid an approach, and it should be used as a guiding beacon that drives this environment and creates this environment for both safety and honesty. Because I believe that without those two things, you really cannot have the right culture and the right environment. So 2015, Marek and the family move over. Here we are. And as I was sitting down and thinking about it, it gave birth to team. So team, first of all, we start with a T, and that is talk. Now, simple, easier said than done sometimes, but it's the cornerstone of effective leadership it is the cornerstone of leadership and of communication. Leaders must and have to master the skill of articulating ideas, visions, and expectations, right? Because if you cannot articulate your vision and your desired outcome, it's going to be extremely difficult for people, I guess, to follow where it is that you are going. So you have to be clear and open, and you have to foster a sense of transparency, unity, trust, as I said, important within the team. So it not only talking, but also honing the active skill of listening. Yeah. Right. So it's not only the talk element, it's also the listening component of it too. So that's
Absolutely.
the first.
Absolutely, right? So yeah, communicating, being able to communicate and listening is critical. People need to know that you're present and that you're hearing them.
Yeah, and look, there are copious studies that talk by various leaders that talk about the fact that leaders who actually excel in communication build stronger and lasting bonds with their teams. But once again, I want to come back to the thing that I said right in the very beginning, Greg, and that is you've got to find your own style. You've got to find your own style of communicating. You need to be able to articulate all of those things that you want to articulate very clearly. The second one is evaluate, right? So the phrase that I would use here is inspect what you expect. Leadership requires a keen understanding of the outcome. I think I've already said that. But to lead effectively, one must evaluate and inspect the narrow set of goals, timelines, and deliverables. And here, I believe data can be an extremely powerful tool for leaders that actually embrace it. So those who integrate its inspection into the decision-making process can gain valuable insight into team and individual dynamics. So inspecting what you expect, utilizing data to your own benefit is essential.
And I would imagine by doing that, you're establishing a culture and a relationship of accountability because the expectation is set.
Yeah, and look, there are many tools out there that an enterprise will typically use or be empowered with, and utilizing those tools to further enhance then your communication style and through the use of data becomes even more powerful because it's no longer based on an opinion. There is a substantiated amount of fact behind it. So you'll see the team acronym it'll run through each and every step, and it'll draw on each and every step continuously. So as you get better with the data, so does your talk or your communication change. And as we'll get into the last two, you'll see another continuous pulling on that string throughout. So you ready for the third one?
Yes.
All right. So the third one is a pretty obvious one, but the reality of it all is that without it, there's really nothing much that will happen. And the A stands for action. The action component it goes without saying. Any plan without action is a dream. And a proactive, actionable plan is the backbone of effective leadership. It's simply not good enough to react to a challenge. You have to anticipate the path ahead of the ahead of you and then take preemptive steps to ensure that you still, once again, reach to the right outcome, right? So if you, once again, tie the three together now, you're fostering an environment of critical thinking through the action. You utilizing the data to further embrace and to be able to further sort of substantiate the communication style and the communication topic that you are then embarking on and that you are actually communicating to the team. So once again, there's a logical step throughout the last three. And I think the last one, Greg, which we both talked about early on, which sounds to me like we're both passionate about, is obviously the mentorship, right? And for me, the mentoring aspect is really about investing in teaching and development of future leaders and investing in sustainable future. That's it. By fostering an environment of continuous learning, you ensure that not only are you equipped for current challenges, but future challenges too. And mentorship, in my humble opinion, can create a legacy of leadership excellence because your leaders of today or your upcoming leaders of today become the mentors and the leaders of tomorrow. And each one of those steps, TEAM, as I said, they're intricately tied together. But there is, as I mentioned right in the very beginning, there are three guiding or simple principles that sit behind, which I added because I do believe they're important. So first one, outside of the team, and if you think about the peripheral of team, is consistency. Why is consistency important? Well, if you're going to be communicating and if you're going to be inspecting what you expect, and if you are going to be taking actions, and if you're going to be mentoring, make sure you do it on a consistent basis. Set those proactive sessions up and make sure that as you move through the first session, which will be a little choppy and clunky here and there, as you move to the second one, it'll become a little bit more easier and so on and so forth. The level of consistency drives a better sense of expectation and awareness of what's going to happen next. The second one is simplicity, right? If it's not simple and it's not simple to articulate, it's not simple to teach. And if it's not simple to teach, it's definitely not going to be simple to understand. And then the last one, and the teams that I've led are more than aware of this, is focus. And I prefer to almost say it's a narrow focus. Do not try to take on the world initially or boil the ocean, as the saying goes. Get to a point where you identify a key component. Let's say you have 10 outcomes that you want, 10 targets that you want to identify the first one. Then get over the hurdle, succeed in the first one, because that in itself fosters the right behavior, changes the mindset on achievement. It changes the behavior within a team really on, hey, we've achieved this. How do we get after the next one? And there's a self of accomplishment that goes with it, which is extremely important from a positive drive point of view. So in a nutshell, I know I've spoken a lot, Greg, but that's the team, that's the principle, and that's what I still utilize this on a daily basis.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, if I'm on your team, I really would have a sense that you are with team, you're designing an experience, an environment for me that empowers me, and that you as my manager aren't telling me what to do, but you're actually mentoring me and empowering me, talking with me. What's your important work, Greg? Okay, so how are you going to decide if you're successful in that? How are we going to evaluate, how you're doing with that work? What's the action, right? One of the questions that a lot of coaches forget, a lot of leaders forget at the end of the coaching conversation is, well, what are you going to do? And when are you going to do it by? Right. So that enables me then to ask, well, then how can I help? So activating people and then being available to mentor, right? If I'm on your team, you're going to set me up to success and go. And I can trust that if I hit a barrier, I know where Marek is. I can find him. But otherwise, he's going to leave me alone because he is empowering me to go get this done.
Indeed. And you know what? It's as I said, I keep on saying this, it's easier said than done because our human nature is to jump straight in and try to deliver an answer and provide an answer rather than, you
Right.
know, enable that critical thinking that allows somebody to just guiding them subtly to actually make them feel like they've come up on the answer themselves. And guess what that does? That creates yet another, a different environment where the self-worth of the individual and the belief in themselves is actually accelerated to a point where they think, yeah, actually, you know what? I can do this. I can do it and I should continuously do it rather than let me swivel to my chair to the left or to the right and seek a quick response and a quick answer. So
Yeah.
it's extremely important. Yeah.
Yeah. We're addicted to being the expert problem solver, right?
Yeah, we are.
And the unintended consequence of that is that if you keep feeding me the answers, you're never going to know if I know the answer, right? So if you're trying to develop me, how do you know if I know the answer? You keep giving me the answer.
That's right.
Over time, it kind of, it's unintentionally disempowering. It's like, do you not trust that I can figure this out myself? Do you, right? So it causes self-doubt to come into the equation. So the way that your style, a way of showing up, I would love to scale that across organizations, and we were just delivering our Be a Great Coach program in an organization last week. And we had this conversation about how do you break this expert problem solver habit that we have as leaders. And it seems to me that your team framework and the mindset that you go in with, you've figured out a way to catch yourself and bite your tongue and draw those answers out of folks so that they feel empowered to go and activate and get stuff done.
It's the most difficult thing to do, to be the last one to speak.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been terrific. I have really appreciated this. I imagine our listeners, I'm anticipating when we air this, folks are going to love it. I really appreciate all the advice that you shared. This has been a mentoring session for all of us who have been listening today. Just all kinds of tips and ideas from you about how to step into a really powerful leadership, right? We talk about ultra leadership being leadership that's not usual and ordinary, right? That, you're not just ticking a box. You really are, you take it as this is a real profound responsibility that I have, taking care of these people and helping them achieve.
Indeed. And Greg, thank you. I appreciate the very kind words. I think it was Simon Sinek that said, it's all about taking care of people that are in your care, right? That's exactly what this is, right? So mentorship. And for me, the team framework really can, and it did to me, and I'm not saying that it will to everybody, but I invite your listeners across the globe to utilize it and provide the relevant feedback to me in terms of how it has helped them and whether it has helped them and what they found. But it's important to understand that it can provide a simple but effective and repeatable blueprint. What is important to understand is that it needs to also be expanded. It needs to take on to adopt to its unique environment. And what I mean by that is that not every team is the same, because not every individual is the same. Not every culture is the same. So whilst team is a guiding principle, I think the magic happens when you allow it to take a life of its own and it starts to being translated and adopted into the different environments.
Yeah, it becomes the culture of your team and then their teams, right? And so you're building a culture around this framework. It's a way of leading, and each leader is applying it in their own way, right? In their circumstance. So thank you. This has been fantastic, Marek. I really appreciate it. I share my gratitude with you. I'll give you a chance. I'll give you the final word. We'll wrap things up. And anything you're grateful for as we're sitting here speaking today, and we'll leave it at that.
First of all, eternal gratitude to you and to the listener, and offering me the opportunity to be able to share this simple but effective sort of strategy that I am so passionate about. I've developed it, embraced it, enhanced it, tried it, changed it over the last at least 10 years, and it continues to evolve. And as I said, I think the most important bit for me is that I do not like to work in a vacuum. And I would sincerely appreciate any kind of a feedback in terms of how it positively has had an influence and effect on, the new upcoming leaders, and also the sort of seasoned leaders, and what particular scenarios and challenges that they found themselves in, and hopefully how this framework has helped them in resolving those. So once again, my biggest thanks and gratitude goes out to you, and I thoroughly enjoyed our time together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for listening to another episode of Ultra Leadership. We hope you enjoy what we bring to you through the podcast. Please find us on our YouTube channel at Ultra Leadership. Please find us on LinkedIn. You can subscribe to our weekly Ultra Leadership newsletter, where we try to share wisdom like you hear from our guests, and tools and frameworks that can be of help to you as you are doing your important work as a leader in your organization. So until next time, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
If you're enjoying Ultra Leadership, please take a minute and give us a review wherever you find your podcasts. And please stay in touch. Sign up for our Ultra Leadership newsletter at ultraleadership.com. Now, before you jump to your next meeting, I invite you to reflect on what you heard today. What stood out for you? What insight might you want to incorporate into your leadership practice? Until next time, remember, as a leader, you always have the power to shape the future and change lives. So go to the edge and push farther. Thanks for listening.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.